Welcome, my friend. I'm so glad you've joined me tonight. Take a moment to get comfortable, breathe deeply, and let the noise of the day fade away. This time is just for you, a gentle escape into history, where we'll wander slowly through the life of a man who ruled an empire not just with power, but with wisdom. Tonight, we're about to explore the world of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor of Rome. What kind of man could lead one of history's greatest empires while still tending to the inner life of thought, reflection, and moral virtue? We'll walk with him through gardens, palaces, and battlefields. We'll peek into his private moments of contemplation and maybe even learn how his quiet philosophy can still whisper to us across time. Before we step into ancient Rome, here's a small question for you. Where are you listening from tonight? Type it in the comments if you feel like sharing. It's always fascinating to see how far our stories can travel. Now, let's begin our journey. Rome, in the 2nd century, was a city of grandeur and gentle chaos. Streets hummed with the soft clatter of carts, the distant shouts of merchants, and the occasional laughter of children chasing one another near fountains. The scent of fresh bread drifted from bakeries, mingling with the perfume of jasmine and olive groves. Marble temples and palaces gleamed faintly as lanterns swayed in the evening breeze, casting long shadows across the city. In this bustling empire lived Marcus Aurelius, a man unlike many rulers before him. A philosopher as much as a sovereign, he balanced the immense weight of power with quiet reflection, a stoic heart, and a gentle mind. He was known not only for commanding legions and governing provinces, but also for writing words that would last for centuries. What kind of man could rule such a vast empire with both strength and wisdom? How does one walk through the corridors of power while noticing the flutter of a bird outside the palace window? These questions, softly whispered, invite us to follow the story of a philosopher-emperor whose life was a meditation in action. Marcus Aurelius was not born with the crown in his hand. He was shaped by curiosity, reflection, and a deep commitment to virtue. From his earliest days, he observed the world keenly, noticing the small beauties and quiet injustices alike. Even in the midst of Rome's grandeur, he found moments of contemplation, a gentle breeze through the columns, a child's laughter echoing down a corridor, or the distant hum of merchants closing their stalls at dusk. And so, let us settle into this world together, gently stepping into the streets, gardens, and halls of Rome. Tonight, we will walk alongside Marcus Aurelius, not only as an emperor, but as a human being navigating life, duty, and the delicate art of living rightly. The streets of Rome are quieting as dusk falls. The marble of the Forum glows softly under the fading sun, while shadows stretch across cobblestone lanes. Somewhere, a distant bell tolls, echoing gently over the city. Life here is vibrant yet measured, a rhythm of power, whispers, and duty. And at the heart of it all, one man stands poised between philosophy and empire, Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just another emperor with a crown and soldiers at his back. He was a thinker, a poet of action, a man who paused to reflect while holding the fate of millions in his hands. Imagine him, perhaps leaning on the balcony of the Palatine Hill, eyes tracing the Tiber River as it wound through the city. What kind of man could govern the vast Roman Empire with strength, fairness, and a mind tuned to wisdom? That is the story we're about to explore. Born into privilege, Marcus's life might seem easy to an outsider. Palaces, tutors, fine clothing, the aroma of baked bread wafting through the estate gardens. But life, even for an heir to the empire, is never without challenge. He would face illness, war, political intrigue, and personal sorrow. And yet, he cultivated calmness, reflection, and a philosophy that would carry him through every trial. Imagine the morning in his early life, sunlight spilling through tall windows, birds calling in the garden. Young Marcus sits with scrolls spread before him, fingers tracing letters in Greek and Latin, absorbing the wisdom of philosophers long gone. This is the Roman Empire in miniature, a world brimming with knowledge, duty, and subtle whispers of power. In these moments, he begins the quiet practice that will define him, looking inward, understanding himself, preparing for a life that will demand every ounce of virtue he can muster. His story is one of balance, between action and reflection, between duty and personal desire, between the often brutal demands of ruling an empire and the gentle voice of conscience that whispered nightly as he wrote in his private journals. He was not perfect, and he never claimed to be. Yet there was something profoundly human about a man who could wield power while remaining devoted to the inner life of thought and morality. And perhaps this is the most remarkable part. While many emperors sought glory, conquest, or fame, Marcus sought understanding, not just of the world around him, but of the world within. What does it mean to live rightly? To be just? To face suffering without anger? To meet loss with quiet dignity? These questions filled his days as much as the administration of an empire. You might wonder, as you listen tonight, what those quiet moments looked like. Maybe he sat under a soft sky, watching the gentle movements of the city, or strolled through gardens where the scent of flowers mingled with the earthy aroma of the Tiber. Perhaps a servant quietly approached with scrolls and ink, or a tutor lingered to guide his mind through the labyrinth of Stoic thought. And in these small, almost invisible moments, a great man was being quietly shaped. Let's pause for a moment and imagine that scene together. The soft flicker of oil lamps in the evening, the hush of servants moving carefully to not disturb their young master, the faint rustle of leaves outside. A boy sits with a scroll, hand poised, mind wandering through questions of virtue, mortality, and the fleeting nature of power. That boy, in time, will become the emperor we now remember as Marcus Aurelius. And the lessons he learned here, lessons in patience, reflection, and moral courage, will guide him through decades of leadership, war, and personal sorrow. In this story, we won't rush. We'll walk gently through the streets and halls of Rome, linger in quiet gardens, and pause to reflect on the life of a man who ruled not only an empire, but also himself. There will be moments of humor, too, the little human quirks that reveal the man behind the laurel wreath. Perhaps a tutor scolds him for mispronouncing a Greek word, or a servant hides a snack meant to tempt a disciplined young mind. These tiny details remind us that even an emperor, even a philosopher, is human. By the end of this journey, you will not just know Marcus Aurelius as a name in history books. You will sense his presence, the thoughtful gaze, the gentle humor, the quiet strength that carried him through loss and conflict. You may even find yourself pondering your own days with the soft, reflective lens he used to view the world. So, settle in, breathe slowly, and allow the weight of the day to melt away. Let the whispers of ancient Rome guide you through cobbled streets, marble halls, and quiet gardens. And as you drift into the story, consider this. What thoughts might have crossed his mind as he gazed at the empire from his window? A young man with the future heavy on his shoulders, yet a calm heart and a reflective mind ready for whatever life would bring? This is the beginning of our journey into the life of Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, a man of wisdom and duty, whose story still speaks to us across nearly 2,000 years. And perhaps, as you listen tonight, it will also speak to you in a gentle, quiet way, guiding you into a calm, reflective rest. The city of Rome wakes slowly as the first light of morning brushes across red-tiled roofs and the marble of grand villas. A soft breeze carries the faint scent of bread baking in distant ovens, mingling with the earthy aroma of the Tiber. In one such villa, in the heart of the city, a boy named Marcus Aurelius begins his day. Born in 121 CE into a wealthy patrician family, Marcus's world was one of comfort and expectation. His early life was carefully structured, filled with tutors, scrolls, and the quiet hum of family servants moving gracefully through the halls. Yet, even amidst luxury, there was no room for idleness. The Aurelii believed in discipline, in cultivating both mind and character from an early age. Marcus learned that life's trials could be met with reason, patience, and calm reflection. Even as a child, he showed discipline, curiosity, and introspection, qualities that would define his leadership. Marcus exhibited a calm and reflective nature, remarkable for his age. While other boys might have chased games through the villa gardens or sparred playfully in the streets, Marcus preferred long walks among trees, tracing his fingers along the cool stone walls and listening. He observed the laughter of children, the quiet devotion of servants, and the subtle movements of the city. These small moments, almost invisible to others, honed his attention to life's rhythms and instilled a deep sense of empathy and understanding. Imagine him sitting beneath an olive tree in the palace gardens, sunlight filtering through the leaves, quill in hand, pondering life's impermanence. Perhaps a small dog chased a butterfly nearby, and Marcus smiled softly, noting the small joys of life even as he contemplated the grander questions. These early experiences planted the seeds of a mind that would balance thought with action, reflection with responsibility. The calm, patient approach he learned in these quiet moments would later guide him through the immense challenges of ruling an empire. Young Marcus was curious in every sense of the word. He asked questions relentlessly, sometimes to the gentle exasperation of his teachers. Why does the river flow this way? Why do people act unjustly? Why must the stars follow their patterns so exactly? Each question was a tiny thread, weaving into the fabric of his later philosophy. His education was rigorous, blending Greek and Latin literature, history, rhetoric, and, most importantly, philosophy. It was during these early years that he encountered the teachings of Stoicism, the philosophy that would guide him throughout his life. He learned that virtue was the highest good, that reason could temper the chaos of emotion, and that the world often unfolds beyond our control. His tutor, Junius Rusticus, became more than a teacher. He was a mentor who quietly shaped the boy's moral compass. Rusticus encouraged Marcus not just to memorize the words of philosophers, but to live them, to consider deeply what it meant to be a good human being. Family life was both a sanctuary and a subtle challenge. His parents, though loving, demanded discipline and respect. Lessons in humility came not from harsh punishment, but through expectation and example. Marcus learned early that power and privilege carried responsibility, a lesson that would echo throughout his life. Even in these early years, he wrestled quietly with the tension between personal desire and moral duty, a tension every human experiences, though few must face it under the weight of an empire. And yet, there were moments of levity. Perhaps a servant would hide a sweet fig in his pocket, or he would mischievously scribble a Latin phrase in the dust of the courtyard steps before a tutor could notice. These tiny human touches remind us that Marcus, even as a philosophical mind, was still a boy who delighted in the small joys of life. Imagine him now, seated beneath a columned veranda, scrolls unrolled before him. Sunlight filters through the leaves, dancing lightly across parchment. He dips a quill into ink and copies lines from Homer or Plato, pondering their meaning. The city hums faintly around him, merchants calling their wares, the distant clatter of hooves on stone, and the soft cooing of pigeons. In these quiet hours, a mind is being quietly forged, one capable of bearing the immense responsibilities of empire while still attending to the delicate art of living wisely. Marcus's early education also emphasized public speaking, a skill crucial for any Roman noble. Yet even here, he approached lessons with the same calm diligence, listening more than speaking at first, observing more than performing. This patience would later define his leadership style, allowing him to act with clarity and composure even in the most turbulent moments of his reign. The gardens of his family home were more than decoration. They were classrooms, laboratories, and sanctuaries. In their quiet paths, Marcus reflected on life, mortality, and the beauty of the natural world. He learned to notice the change of seasons, the slow growth of trees, the quiet resilience of flowers that bloomed against the odds. These reflections were early exercises in the Stoic practice that would later guide him through plague, war, and loss. By the time he entered adolescence, Marcus was already recognized among his peers for his wisdom, composure, and innate sense of fairness. Friends and tutors alike noticed his ability to listen deeply, to weigh decisions thoughtfully, and to consider not only his own benefit but the welfare of others. These traits, quietly nurtured in the soft corridors of his childhood home, would become the foundation of a remarkable life. And so, as night falls over Rome, casting gentle shadows across villa walls, we can imagine young Marcus Aurelius, eyes heavy with the day's learning, perhaps gazing at the stars. What thoughts cross his mind as he watches the distant lights of the city? What dreams or reflections stir within a young heart already inclined toward contemplation? In these early years, a philosopher is being quietly shaped, not in grand halls of power, but in the soft, intimate spaces where curiosity, discipline, and reflection meet. The story of Marcus's early years reminds us that greatness often begins in quiet moments. The habits we form, the questions we ask, and the values we cherish in youth quietly lay the groundwork for the life we lead. For Marcus Aurelius, these formative years would become the roots that sustained him through decades of rule, reflection, and human struggle. And so, as we drift softly into the life of a young man growing into a philosopher-emperor, take a deep breath. Imagine the warm sunlight on stone steps, the soft whisper of leaves in the gardens, and the quiet, patient curiosity of a boy destined to leave a mark on history. Morning light spills over Rome, brushing the city's rooftops and reflecting off the marble of the Forum. The city is alive with the soft murmur of merchants, the clatter of carts on cobblestones, and the distant hum of the Tiber flowing steadily toward the sea. In this world of motion and responsibility, young Marcus Aurelius begins to step toward a destiny few could imagine. By his late teens, Marcus's life had already been carefully guided by both family and mentors. He had learned the rhythm of duty, the art of thought, and the importance of virtue. But the question of his future loomed quietly, like the slow turning of the seasons. What would it mean to take a place in the long line of Roman emperors? Could one wield immense power while staying true to the inner life of reflection and morality? His path toward leadership was unusual by modern standards. Rome's succession often relied on adoption rather than bloodline alone, a practice designed to ensure capable rulers rather than heirs born by chance. Marcus was adopted by Antoninus Pius at the behest of Hadrian, and suddenly, the boy who once walked quietly through villa gardens and reflected under the shade of olive trees was now heir apparent. The weight of expectation pressed gently but firmly on his shoulders. Yet Marcus did not rush. In private gardens and sunlit libraries, he continued his studies. Philosophy remained a quiet anchor, reminding him that life's greatest challenges were often internal as much as external. Stoicism, which had fascinated him in childhood, became both shield and compass. Duty and ambition were not enemies. but companions to be balanced with care. Political appointments followed naturally as Marcus matured. He observed the workings of the Senate, the deliberations of magistrates, and the endless petitions of citizens. At first, he listened more than he spoke, absorbing the subtle rhythms of power, the pauses between words, the careful weighing of opinion, the silent judgments made by those who truly understood influence. This patience, this attentiveness, would become a hallmark of his leadership. And amidst the gravitas of preparation, life continued with moments of personal joy. Marcus married Faustina, a noble woman of grace and intelligence, whose presence would provide companionship, support, and partnership. Their marriage was not simply a union of convenience. It was a blending of duty with subtle, enduring affection. They shared the burdens of expectation and the quiet pleasures of life, strolling through gardens, discussing literature, and reflecting on the virtues they hoped to instill in their children. But the inner struggle never left him entirely. Ambition whispered its temptations, as it does to every young person stepping toward power. How to balance personal desire with moral integrity. How to embrace authority without losing oneself in its trappings. These questions lingered in quiet corridors and candlelit studies, often accompanied only by the scratching of a quill across parchment. Imagine Marcus in a private library, late evening. Scrolls are stacked around him, candles flickering in the soft shadows. The city outside is muted, a gentle hum in the distance. He writes, reflects, and reconsiders. How to be just when laws are complex. How to show mercy without inviting chaos. Each answer comes slowly, patiently, with the understanding that true leadership is not about rushing to decision, but about steady, thoughtful action. Even in these early years of preparation, Marcus's human side emerges. Perhaps he teases a servant who hides a small treat in his pocket, or laughs softly at a tutor's dramatic recitation of rhetoric. These little glimpses of humor remind us that an emperor is not a figure of cold authority, but a person shaped by joy, curiosity, and even gentle mischief. By the time Antoninus Pius's reign neared its end, Marcus had matured into a man capable of carrying both the moral and practical weight of the empire. His education, mentorship, and quiet reflection had prepared him for a life few could fathom. And yet, the ultimate test was not in scrolls or speeches, but in the daily choice to balance power with virtue, duty with humanity. As we imagine young Marcus stepping into his first official roles, we also glimpse a man still very much himself, curious, disciplined, and quietly observant. The streets of Rome stretch before him, full of opportunity, challenge, and the whispers of history. And within his own mind, the meditations of a philosopher continue to guide him, shaping a ruler who will one day face wars, plagues, and the weighty responsibilities of a vast empire. So, as night falls and we leave him among the soft glow of oil lamps and the quiet rustle of scrolls, take a moment to reflect. Picture the gentle movement of leaves outside the window, the faint aroma of ink and parchment, and the quiet patience of a young man preparing to lead a world that is both magnificent and fragile. Marcus Aurelius's journey to power is not only a story of politics and adoption. It is a story of reflection, discipline, and the careful cultivation of character. And now, as we gently turn the page to the next chapter, imagine the young philosopher stepping ever closer to his destiny, ready to carry the Roman Empire on shoulders guided by wisdom, patience, and the quiet, enduring voice of his own conscience. World itself pauses to breathe. And above it all, in the Palatine Hill Palace, Marcus Aurelius steps into his role as emperor, the weight of the empire resting quietly yet heavily on his shoulders. In 161 CE, Marcus ascended the throne, sharing power with his adoptive brother Lucius Verus. Though young, he was already tempered by years of study, reflection, and preparation. He was not an emperor of impulse or vanity. His rule would be guided by Stoicism, a philosophy that taught him to embrace duty with calm, accept the uncontrollable, and temper emotion with reason. Yet life as emperor was not gentle. Rome faced immediate challenges, military threats along the northern frontiers, a delicate political landscape at home, and, soon, a devastating plague that would sweep across the empire. Marcus could not retreat into his studies or his gardens. The empire demanded decisions, strategy, and a steady hand. And still, he carried the inner voice of reflection with him, scribbling meditations in quiet moments, often late at night by candlelight. Picture him in a dimly lit study, the soft glow of a lamp illuminating the scrolls before him. Outside, the city rests under a quiet sky, the distant murmurs of night travelers drifting faintly through the streets. Here, Marcus writes not for glory, but for understanding, reflections on virtue, the nature of human life, and the responsibilities of power. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be, he pens. Be one. Words of guidance to himself, reminders that philosophy is meant to live, not merely to be read. His reign was marked by a calm decisiveness. Wars and political intrigue tested his patience, yet he met each challenge with measured thought. When reports of border conflicts arrived, Marcus balanced military strategy with compassion for those under his command. Soldiers were not mere instruments of power. They were human beings with fears, hopes, and families. And in this recognition, he found both the moral guidance and practical wisdom necessary to lead effectively. Yet the pressures of leadership were relentless. Plagues swept through the cities, claiming countless lives. Decisions of life and death fell upon him daily. And still, in moments of quiet reflection, he returned to philosophy, reminding himself that while much is beyond control, his own mind and actions remain his own. The balance of empathy and duty, patience and decisiveness, became the defining rhythm of his rule. Imagine the emperor walking through a garden within the palace walls. The air is fragrant with blooming flowers, the soft rustle of leaves a gentle counterpoint to the weight of empire. Soldiers pass respectfully, and servants tend to the fountains. In this serene environment, Marcus pauses, considering both the needs of the empire and the welfare of its people. Even a small decision, how to distribute food during a famine or how to comfort a grieving family, carries profound significance, and he approaches each with thoughtfulness and calm. Marcus's Stoicism was not abstract. It guided action. It helped him endure the unendurable, the betrayal of advisors, the sudden deaths of friends, the endless pressures of politics. In the quiet of his chambers, he reminded himself to act with virtue, to consider the greater good, and to accept the things he could not change. These private practices were the foundation of public strength. And yet, Marcus was not without moments of gentle humor and human warmth. Perhaps he would smile at the antics of a mischievous page, or chuckle quietly at a playful comment from Faustina. These small glimpses remind us that even the emperor, burdened by the immense responsibilities of Rome, remained human, capable of laughter, curiosity, and the quiet appreciation of life's simple pleasures. Evenings often found him alone with his thoughts, writing meditations, reflecting on the events of the day. Candlelight flickered across his scrolls, casting soft shadows that danced on the walls. Here, away from public eyes, he confronted his own fears, doubts, and moral questions. What does it truly mean to lead? How can I act rightly when every choice carries consequences for millions? Stoicism guided him not only through philosophy, but through life itself, shaping a ruler who could endure tragedy with grace and govern with integrity. As night falls over the Palatine, imagine Marcus sitting quietly in the soft glow, the city stretching silently beyond the palace walls. The weight of empire is heavy, yet his mind remains steady. His thoughts, measured and reflective, rise and fall like the Tiber below, sometimes turbulent, sometimes calm, but always moving with purpose. Marcus Aurelius on the throne is not merely a figure of authority. He is a philosopher in action, a ruler who integrates thought and duty, reflection and decision. In this balance lies the quiet power that defines him, the ability to face hardship, to act justly, and to remain human in a world that often demands otherwise. And so, as we leave him in his candlelit study, we prepare to follow him further, into battlefields, into the struggles of family and personal loss, and deeper into the meditations that would secure his lasting legacy. Through it all, we witness the quiet strength of a man who governed not only an empire, but also himself. The northern borders of the Roman Empire stretch wide, dense forests brushing against the horizon, rivers winding like silver threads through the land. The air is crisp, tinged with the scent of pine and damp earth. Camps rise quietly among the trees, soldiers moving with disciplined calm, the soft clatter of armor and distant murmur of commands blending into the rhythm of life at the frontier. Here, Marcus Aurelius faces challenges that test not only his mind, but his heart. The Marcomannic Wars called him from the serenity of Rome into the chaos of battle. Tribes pressing against the empire's borders threatened the stability he had spent years preparing to protect. Yet Marcus approached war as he approached life, with reflection, strategy, and compassion. To him, soldiers were not mere instruments of power, but human beings with fears, families, and hopes. Every decision weighed heavily, not for glory, but for the lives entrusted to his command. Imagine the emperor on a misty morning, observing his troops by the riverbank. Horses paw at the soft ground. Campfire smoke gently curling into the sky, and men sharpen swords or mend armor. Marcus walks slowly among them, listening to their concerns, offering encouragement, and sometimes sharing quiet humor to lighten their burdens. He understands that courage is not merely about facing the enemy, but about sustaining morale, offering reassurance, and leading by example. Even in the thick of conflict, Marcus remains reflective. Letters to Rome carry not only orders, but advice on justice, mercy, and discipline. The nights are long and still. Campfires flicker softly against the dark sky, smoke drifting lazily into the stars. Marcus sits quietly near a small fire, writing in his journal, his thoughts turning inward. What is courage? What is justice? How do we honor life even in the shadow of death? These are the questions he contemplates, often in solitude, while the camp sleeps around him. The flicker of flames and the distant hoot of an owl provide a gentle rhythm to his reflections, a quiet counterpoint to the demands of leadership. Marcus's strategic mind is matched by his emotional awareness. He knows that victories are fragile if won without humanity, that a commander who ignores the human cost may achieve conquest but lose his soul. And so, he walks among the tents, offering a kind word, a careful instruction, a hand extended to steady a nervous soldier. These small, almost invisible gestures define the quiet strength of his leadership. The sensory world of the camp is vivid yet soothing in its own way. The smell of damp earth mixed with the smoke of fires, the soft clank of weapons being polished, the distant roar of a river against stones, and the faint rustle of leaves in the forest. Each element reminds Marcus of life's continuity, even amid war. Nature persists. The human spirit endures. And in these reminders, he finds the calm needed to act wisely and with purpose. War also brings reflection on mortality. Marcus sees death not as a distant abstraction, but as a tangible presence in the faces of soldiers, in the letters from grieving families, in the quiet moments after a skirmish. And yet, he does not despair. He reminds himself that life's impermanence calls not for fear, but for virtue, courage, and compassion. Every action, no matter how small, carries weight. Every decision can honor or disregard the fleeting nature of existence. Even amidst conflict, moments of gentle humor emerge. Perhaps a soldier fumbles a piece of armor, or a horse refuses to cooperate, prompting a quiet smile from the emperor. These little reminders of humanity provide respite from the relentless seriousness of war, softening the edges of duty without diminishing its importance. As dawn breaks over the camp, the world bathed in pale light, Marcus walks slowly through the tents once more. He observes, he reflects, and he plans. The balance between strategy and empathy, between decisive action and patient thought, is the hallmark of his leadership. The lessons he learned in childhood, discipline, reflection, and virtue, guide him still, even in the harshest of circumstances. And so, in the quiet mornings and long nights of war, we see Marcus Aurelius as both emperor and philosopher, a man who carries the weight of an empire not with arrogance, but with thoughtfulness, compassion, and quiet strength. His leadership reminds us that even in the most trying times, humanity need not be lost, and wisdom can guide action through every storm. As we leave the campfires glowing softly beneath the trees, let us carry this image of Marcus in mind, walking slowly among his soldiers, riding quietly by firelight, balancing the demands of war with the unshakable principles of Stoic reflection. It is here, in these moments of tension and tenderness, that the philosopher-emperor shows us the enduring power of duty tempered by empathy. The city of Rome rests beneath a soft twilight, the marble of temples and villas glowing faintly as lanterns flicker along quiet streets. Inside one such palace, the life of an emperor continues not only in grand decisions, but in the gentle, hidden rhythms of family and home. Here, Marcus Aurelius navigates a different kind of responsibility, one of love, loss, and quiet reflection. Marriage brought both companionship and partnership. Faustina, his wife, was more than a figure beside the emperor. She was a companion in thought, duty, and the subtle joys of life. Together, they walked the palace gardens, discussed literature, and shared reflections on virtue and family. Their partnership was grounded in respect, trust, and the occasional shared laughter, a reminder that even the weight of an empire could coexist with human warmth. Fatherhood added another layer of quiet responsibility. Marcus sought not just to govern an empire, but to guide his children toward virtue, curiosity, and resilience. He observed them closely, teaching by example rather than decree, and hoping to instill the same calm, reflective mind that had guided him since childhood. Letters, gentle guidance, and evening walks became tools of subtle mentorship, shaping young lives with patience rather than strict instruction. But life, even for an emperor, is marked by sorrow. The Antonine plague swept through the empire, touching the emperor's own household. Friends, family, and citizens fell ill. Marcus faced grief not as an abstract philosopher, but as a father, husband, and human being. The losses he endured reminded him daily that even power cannot shield one from life's impermanence. Yet Stoicism provided a steadying hand, allowing him to acknowledge sorrow without being consumed by it. He learned to balance public duty with private grief, offering comfort where he could while maintaining the calm presence required of a ruler. Imagine him walking through the palace halls late at night, the soft flicker of oil lamps casting long shadows. He pauses, listening to the distant footsteps of a servant, the quiet sigh of the wind through open windows, and reflects on the fragility of life. Each death, each sorrow, is met with contemplation and care. And still, he finds moments of gentle joy. A child's laughter echoing down the corridor, a quiet conversation with Faustina, the simple pleasure of a shared meal, or the scent of blooming flowers in the garden. Marcus's personal struggles also included the tension between public expectation and private desire. He could not always act solely as a husband, father, or philosopher. The empire demanded his attention, his energy, and his decisions. Yet he carried these burdens with thoughtfulness, striving to meet both family and state with integrity. This delicate balance between public duty and private life would shape not only his reign, but the philosophy he practiced daily. Even amidst sorrow, moments of gentle human humor and warmth emerge. Perhaps a child mispronounces a word, or a servant presents a slightly crooked meal platter, prompting a quiet, knowing smile. These fleeting glimpses remind us that even an emperor facing immense responsibility remains fundamentally human, finding lightness where it can be found. The plague, wars, and personal losses reinforced Marcus's reflections on mortality. Each life touched, each loss mourned, deepened his understanding of impermanence and compassion. And yet, he did not dwell in despair. Instead, he embraced the quiet lessons of hardship, to act with virtue, to cherish moments of human connection, and to find resilience in the face of inevitable suffering. Evenings often found Marcus in quiet contemplation, perhaps walking in the palace gardens under a soft sky, or seated in a study with a candle casting gentle light on the walls. Here, away from the formalities of court and the demands of governance, he conceit. Through all of these experiences, Marcus Aurelius remained committed to living a life guided by virtue. He faced challenges not with bitterness or avoidance, but with patience, empathy, and careful thought. His approach to family and personal struggles reflects a universal truth. Even those with the greatest power are touched by the quiet, human challenges of love, loss, and care. As we leave him walking slowly through the gardens, consider the calm strength it takes to balance empire with family, ambition with love, and sorrow with reflection. These intimate moments reveal the man behind the crown, not only a philosopher or ruler, but a father, husband, and human being navigating life with thoughtfulness, humility, and enduring care. And so, as night drifts over Rome, we close this chapter with the quiet image of Marcus Aurelius, an emperor walking softly among his family, contemplating the impermanence of life, yet holding steady to the virtues that would guide him through both public and private trials. Night falls softly over Rome, and the city grows quiet. Lanterns flicker in narrow streets. Shadows stretch across the marble of palaces, and the distant Tiber glimmers under a pale moon. In a private chamber, Marcus Aurelius sits alone, a candle casting a warm glow over scrolls spread before him. Here, in these intimate hours, philosophy becomes practice, and reflection becomes the rhythm of life. The meditations, written in moments of solitude, are not grand proclamations for others, but private exercises of the mind. Marcus does not write to be read by the empire. He writes to guide himself. Each sentence, each reflection, is a gentle reminder to live rightly, to act with virtue, and to meet the world with calm and understanding. Stoicism guided each reflection. Self-control, rationality, acceptance, and empathy. You have power over your mind, not outside events, he reminded. Imagine him dipping his quill into ink, the soft scratch of the tip filling the quiet room. Outside, the soft murmur of the city is barely audible, carried through open windows by a gentle night breeze. Here, in the flicker of candlelight, Marcus contemplates the impermanence of life, the fleeting nature of wealth, the transience of power, the inevitable arrival of death. Yet rather than despair, he finds clarity. To live fully, he reminds himself, is to live virtuously, with reason and compassion. Stoic principles guide each reflection. Self-control in the face of temptation, patience amid suffering, rationality when confronted by chaos, and acceptance of what cannot be changed. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, he writes quietly to himself. Words like these are anchors, helping him navigate the storms of both public life and private sorrow. Even as emperor, Marcus treats human interactions with care. In his writings, he reminds himself to be fair, to listen, and to act with empathy. Every decision, whether about governance, family, or soldiers, is shaped by these meditative exercises. Imagine the city beyond his window, streets empty, only the soft whisper of wind in trees. He considers each word, each action, and how it aligns with virtue, reminding himself that true power lies not in command alone, but in the consistent cultivation of wisdom. The meditations are also gentle explorations of mortality. Marcus reflects on loss, suffering, and the fragility of life, not as distant abstractions, but as truths that touch every moment. Yet, in these reflections, there is calm, not fear. Life is transient, he reminds himself, but virtue endures. The choices we make, the compassion we extend, and the wisdom we cultivate create a quiet, lasting echo beyond the boundaries of our short existence. Even here, subtle humor appeared. A clumsy servant, a mispronounced word, a minor absurdity, small reminders that life, even for an emperor, retains human softness. The meditations continue to teach us patience, reflection, and mindful presence. Imagine a late evening, Marcus walking slowly in a palace garden. The soft fragrance of flowers mingles with the earthy scent of the evening air. He pauses by a fountain, listening to the gentle trickle of water. In these small, serene moments, his philosophy comes alive, not in words alone, but in presence, in action, in the quiet harmony between thought and life. His writings are also infused with gentle humor and self-awareness. Marcus reminds himself not to take pride too seriously, not to let vanity cloud judgment, and to notice the small absurdities of life with a wry smile. Perhaps a clumsy servant, a mispronounced word, or a misplaced scroll elicits a quiet chuckle. Tiny reminders that even a philosopher-emperor is human. Through these meditations, Marcus Aurelius teaches us not only about Stoicism, but about mindful living, to observe the world calmly, to act with integrity, and to reflect on our own thoughts and actions. They are exercises in patience, resilience, and empathy, written by a man who faced immense responsibility with grace, and who understood that the mind, cultivated carefully, can provide serenity even amid chaos. As the candle burns lower, shadows dancing softly on the walls, imagine Marcus setting down his quill. The city sleeps, and he sits in stillness, letting thoughts settle like leaves on water. In this quiet reflection, there is peace, a gentle harmony between duty, contemplation, and the human heart. Tonight, as we consider the meditations, we glimpse a private world, a man balancing the weight of an empire with the quiet cultivation of virtue. A ruler who faced loss, war, and the impermanence of life, yet found calm in philosophy, guiding not only his actions, but his soul. And so, as we leave Marcus in the gentle glow of his chamber, let us carry a quiet thought. Wisdom often comes not in grand acts, but in the small, reflective moments where mind and heart meet. It is here, in the soft scratch of a quill and the flicker of candlelight, that the philosopher-emperor endures, both in his own time and for all time. The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in soft amber and violet shades. In the quiet streets of Rome, the murmur of life has softened to a distant whisper. Lamps flicker gently in the forum, casting long, swaying shadows on marble columns. The Tiber moves silently, carrying its reflective silver light to the distant sea. In this serene twilight, we pause to reflect on the life of Marcus Aurelius, a man who carried the weight of an empire with both wisdom and heart. Marcus's final years were marked by the duality of immense responsibility and human vulnerability. Even as he faced plagues and wars, he remained committed to the care of Rome and its people. Letters to governors, advisors, and generals were written with patience, empathy, and a sense of moral purpose. These letters, though practical, also reveal a man quietly attuned to the human condition, aware that power is fleeting, but kindness and virtue endure. Imagine him in his study one late evening, the soft scent of ink and parchment filling the air. Candlelight flickers against the walls, dancing across maps of the empire and carefully stacked scrolls. He dips his quill, pauses, and reflects. What legacy does a ruler leave behind? Not conquest, not gold, but the subtle, enduring influence of thought, action, and example. Even the moment of his death, in 180 CE, carries lessons in calm acceptance. Marcus faced the unknown not with fear, but with reflection and serenity. Sources differ on whether he passed at Vindobona or Sirmium, but these details fade against the greater truth. His life is remembered for the measured, virtuous way he lived, not the precise location where he left the world. His son Commodus followed him, a ruler very different in temperament, less inclined toward thoughtfulness or reflection. History contrasts their characters sharply, yet this contrast highlights Marcus's lasting impact. He taught that leadership is not only about command, but about patience, empathy, and consistent moral reflection. His example continues to echo. Power balanced with wisdom leaves footprints far beyond one's lifetime. The Meditations, though private, became immortal. In them, Marcus distilled the essence of Stoic thought, the importance of self-control, rationality, acceptance, and virtue. These writings offer quiet guidance even today, a gentle reminder that the mind can remain calm amid life's turbulence. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts, he reflected. Let our thoughts, he suggests, be guided by virtue and kindness, shaping how we act in the world. Picture the emperor walking slowly in the palace gardens in the last days of his life, the gentle rustle of olive leaves under a soft wind. A bird calls faintly in the distance, perhaps pausing on a branch as if listening. He considers the fleeting nature of life, the lessons of love and duty, the transience of all things, and the enduring value of compassion and reflection. Marcus's human side emerges here too. Despite immense responsibility, he allowed himself small joys. A smile at a servant's playful mistake, quiet laughter with a child, appreciation of a carefully tended flower in the garden. These moments, seemingly minor, are where the true essence of his character shines, a reminder that even those who rule empires remain profoundly human. His philosophy was also practical. He recognized the inevitability of suffering and loss, yet taught that these realities need not crush the spirit. Life, he knew, is often unpredictable and sometimes harsh, but the mind can remain a place of calm, reflection, and purposeful action. As night deepens, the empire sleeps under a canopy of stars, and Marcus's reflections resonate beyond time. The value of virtue, the quiet strength of empathy, and the serenity found in deliberate, thoughtful living. Even today, we can follow his example. To approach life with patience, to act with reason, to embrace impermanence, and to value human connection. These are timeless lessons drawn from his life. In moments of difficulty, we may picture him in a quiet garden, candle flickering, writing in his journal, considering how best to live rightly, and quietly remind ourselves to do the same. Take a slow, deep breath now. Feel the calm settle across your mind like the gentle night air over Rome. Picture the emperor walking slowly among his garden paths, pausing to observe the world, writing quietly, reflecting with serenity. Let his calm, reflective wisdom guide your thoughts as the day softens into rest. Good night, my friend. May your dreams be gentle, and may you awaken with the quiet strength, patience, and serenity of a mind nurtured by reflection, just like Marcus Aurelius.